bored with that introduction. What are we going to do about that? It's time to come up with a new one, apparently. I'm working off of 2 microphones. You heard me, though, right? I got bored with that introduction. That ain't right. That ain't right. I was a 5-year-old tenacious little girl who wanted to have answers to the situations I was looking at because I was looking at a world that just didn't feel right to me. I was like, where the hell did I land this time? And so I went to my mother and said, you got to answer some questions for me. And so I sat her down and had some really big questions. And one of the big questions I had was, how come if your mother's name is Vardy, you're now going by my father's name, Brian? Inquiring minds wanted to know. And then what she answered me was, that's just the way it is. That ain't right. I'm just saying. And so the unfolding of that begins because I see the world from that place, from that viewpoint of being a feminist, of being a humanist, as being somebody who believes in the power of other people. And so when I looked at my mother and I was like, wait a minute, my mother has a story for me that has nothing to do with me. So I went looking for this other daughter she had because it was only my brother and I. So where was this daughter that she had this plan for? Because it certainly wasn't me. How many of you are aware that there is a truth in you that needs to be told? And how many of you are aware that the truth of you is being blocked by somebody else's perspective or plan for you? And I can't help this. I got to do this. I'm sorry. What the fuck is that? See, that's the story. And that's the story I wasn't engaging in. That's not the story I'm interested in. So what I'm interested in today is to really invite you into showing up for the truth of you. Because it's not until each woman in this room and around the world starts to claim and step into the truth of who they are, do we get to create a world that is right for us. We've got to create our lives by design. We've got to step into knowing that we have the power within us to step forward and create a life worth living because the truth of us has power. The truth of us is what's going to make a difference in the world. But until you step up and say, wait a minute, that ain't right, but what can I do from where I'm at with what I have? So the next step forward then is to get really curious. So this is step 2 of my plan. First, to get to know who I am. 2, to find out in the curiosity of the possibility, how do I start exploring that truth from the depth of really what matters to me. The title for this presentation is something. I know it's something. Sorry. The title of the presentation is Pushed by Pain, Pulled by Passion, a coming out story. And now, we're all spiritual beings having a human expression. And so within that, the awareness that comes through us is that we've designed to look at our longing and our discontent as signals from the universe to help guide us. So that's the pushed by pain. The discontent is that when we're aware that we're unhappy, that's the signal from the universe to move to what's the passion I want to live in? What's the dream I really want to be doing here? How do I step into that? Because the strength of the pushed by pain is that it gives us the muscles, it gives us the momentum, and it gives us the power to actually strengthen our own resolve about who we want to be, because we then move to following the longing, which is the pulled by passion. We all have dreams inside of us. We all have things that we want to accomplish. We all have a way that we want to be in the world. And it's not until we get real curious about that, because we've been handed a bill of goods, I think that's my opinion as a a long-term feminist, I have a viewpoint on this, in case you haven't figured it out already. And the viewpoint is this, is that as long as women are being suppressed, we are in a world that is not developing at the level where we can show human kindness and where we can really bring to the table a humanity that matters so that all of us are rich in resources all the way around the world. There's no lack in the universe, none. So where do we get that story from? It has nothing to do with our own potential. It has nothing to do with the resources on the planet. It's a story of oppression. It's a story that the patriarchy wants us to buy into. Stacy gave me permission to have a few more minutes, so this is going down now. Right? So curiosity becomes a really key piece to this. So moving forward, as I moved forward, I knew that I needed to find people who could support me because I knew I was different. I knew that, first of all, I wasn't going to get married. Second of all, I didn't want any kids. I love kids. I'm a great auntie, but it wasn't my place in the universe. So I moved forward with, well, where can I find the support and the people I needed? So I joined the second wave of the women's movement. And man, talk about finding heart-centered humanitarians who wanted to serve the world in a really big way. Now, we often get tagged as being angry. Well, I think we have a right to be angry, by the way. I'm just saying. But I couldn't live in that anger and be who I wanted to be, so I needed to move forward. About 13 years into the women's movement, I had put my efforts into starting the Halifax Women's Housing Co-op. There was 25 of us who had secure housing. I had formed a women's newspaper called Pandora, and which just ended about 5 years ago, up until, so from 1975 to 1999 or more, it was a thriving women's paper. And then I helped put 2 women's centers together. So I'm in the middle of a protest in downtown Halifax, and I get this download. Anybody have a download in this room where they're like you're told to be doing something different? Well, I'm like in the middle of this protest, and what I hear is, this is not the way to create change in the world. And I'm like, what do you mean? But I'm here doing this. And so because I listen to Spirit move through me all the time, every big change I've ever made in my life has been through Spirit's guidance, I started to ask the question, well, what can I do different? What would that look like? And so because I'm curious, I went to the library, and a book literally fell on my head. And the book was Working from the Inside Out by Sonia Johnson. Well, I read that book, and it changed my life because working from the inside out is where the change is going to happen. And I think more speakers who will hit the stage today will be talking about that. And Mary Lou already talked about that, and Amanda talked about that. So and Carly talked about that. So we're already in the flow of that. But let's get a grip on what that is truly. It means not standing for things that do not support your highest vision. It means saying no when other people are saying, but that would look good on you. It's like, no, I don't like it. It's not good for me. It's hard times when I say to somebody I love dearly, what the fuck are you thinking being a victim to your story? I didn't do that to hurt Mary Lou. I did that because her power is so amazing that I didn't want to see her lose it to a story that did not serve her highest power. And I'd say to all of you, we all have our story. I have my own victim story. It's because I came through that gateway too. I wanted to tell you a story about a friend of mine. This story hurt my heart, by the way. And I have a powerful heart that doesn't like to be hurt, as I think many of us do. My friend's name was Marty, and I was at an International Women's Day celebration. And I sat down to her in the pub, because, I was a pub visitor then. Don't drink now, but I did then. And so I sat down to her, and I noticed that she had scars up her arm. She often kept her arms covered because nobody wants to, cutters like to keep things hidden, right? But she was a cutter. And so we got into this very deep and intense conversation about what was going on in her life. And then I noticed that she had 2 hearing aids. And I was curious about that too, because, this is step number 2, be curious. Right, so I was really curious. And I said, so what happened here? And this story, is about hurt people hurt people. And when we don't do it with our own hurt, we hurt others. And that's true for all of us. And so she was a very masculine-looking woman, which, we all have features, right? Those were her features. She's actually quite attractive in her features. But she got all dolled up one night to go to a party, and on her way walking to the party, 3 young men decided that they didn't like that she was a guy in drag and that they were going to take care of that. Didn't ask her any questions, didn't find out the truth of her. So they started beating on her. Oops, I now want to cry. So they started beating on her, and they knocked her to the ground, and they started kicking at her head, and they actually busted her eardrums. Why? Because hurt people hurt people. Now, what they were given as an education was not to accept diversity. I love that we are in a time when diversity is becoming a really big thing, because it's only when we accept each other for the truth of who we are, back to present number 1, be you and be the truth of you, because that's the only way that we're going to make a difference in the world. So that was a hard place to be sitting, to see, that ain't right? It's not right that we objectify other people and we place our stories on them and then we choose to hurt their lives because somewhere in our own pain we're not willing to look at what we really want to do to be true to ourselves. It's a journey to come home to self, and it takes a lot of work. I say that it takes a lot of rigor. Because if you want to be a conscious human being on this planet, it takes a lot to stay in that mode of consciousness because we want to go numb. We want to drug out. We want to use alcohol. I stopped drinking 30 years ago. It was dangerous for me. I was a loud drunk, and I was a dangerous drunk. And the day came when I recognized that that was not going to be serving my highest purpose. So how was I going to make the changes I needed to make? Well, fortunately, I belong to a community of people who had my back. And that's the thing. Mary Lou did it on her own. But let me tell you, that's the hardest road ever. Because we're not here to do it on our own. We're here to connect. We're here to create community. We're here to do things with and for each other. That's my third point. We need to develop tribe. We cannot do it on our own. As a matter of fact, that's the design of the patriarchy. Why one woman, one man, one family under the roof of one man? Why? Because when we can be kept isolated and separated and not speak to each other and not be valued for who we are, that isolation suffocates us. That isolation takes us down a road that is not meant to be who we are. And yet breaking out of it has hurt people. So whatever the design is it about causing more pain for another human being? That's not my design. And as a humanitarian and a very radical feminist, I have to tell you, love is the only answer in my book. Amen to that. Now, only in the last 5 years have I used the word radical self-care. Women in the 70s was not talking about radical self-care. We were talking about strictly staying alive and not having the shit beaten out of us. My friends were being hospitalized, put in mental institutions, lobotomized against their will. It's hard to be that afraid to be in a world where everything is going on that actually is an objection to your very beingness. Which is why I drank and why I turned to drugs, because I couldn't handle it. Let me ask you this question. Who here would interpret themselves as being a sensitive? What about an intuitive? What about a healer? Oh, I love it. Yes, you see, here's the deal. I took a step to change the world by leaving my community of 16 years to go to a mountaintop where I would become a transformational coach. Because the download was this: you've got to do your inner work if you're going to actually be effective as a change agent in the world. And I'm about that. I'm about doing my work. But I also knew that women had no idea that they needed to do their work. So all of you got work to do. It doesn't matter where you're at on the planet. It doesn't matter how successful you are. The up-leveling of you is coming through spirit breathing through you. And there's a passion inside of you that wants to be met with your excitement about living a life you love. And the more you take action in the direction of living the life you love, the more you're going to love your life. Who wants to love their life? I do. I want to live a life that's totally vibrant and alive and conscious and productive and, change the world. Because that's just a small dream I have, is to change the world. Oh, anybody else want to change the world as we presently know it? Yeah. So the journey we're on is to really become the person that we were birthed to be. And everything that was poured into us up until we were 7, some say 5, some say 7, it doesn't matter. What got poured into us was the belief of the family of origins or the society we work from. And then we have to kind of then look at, well, wait a minute, is that my belief? Is that the truth of me, or is that what I needed to do in order to get fed and have a house, a roof over my head, or what? So the journey then is to become very curious about what is the pain that's pushing you? Where are you unhappy in your life? And then what is pulling you towards your passion, your dream, your intentions? What sparks a light in you that matters enough for you to what? Take action on it. As Stacy said at the earlier part of this journey, it's a fantasy until you take action. So that's me closing that out. The journey here then is for you to recognize that you were born as the source of your own power. That is your choice to step into that power. So you taking responsibility for who you want to be, the truth of you will change lives. It will change your life, and it will be a ripple effect into the world that changes everybody's life. Second, be very curious. The question I always ask, is this me having this feeling and this story, or is this a story that got implanted in me and it's getting in the way of what my real vision is for myself? Because that's the exposure we need to get to in ourselves. It's like, who gave me this story? And is it a story I want to keep, or is it a story that I package up in a beautiful gift and I hand it back over? I've been handing a lot of shit over lately because there's a lot of stuff that I took on that had nothing to do with who I wanted to be. But I did everything in my power to navigate the terrain of staying safe in a world that didn't want to love me. That didn't want me to raise my voice. That didn't want me to be a powerful woman. So I navigated the terrain of what I could do from where I'm at with what I have so that I could be on the stage and support Stacy today and hear you all find the nuggets of the speakers as they go forward today. I wanted to tell you a coming out story. So, because somebody told me I should tell you a coming out story, so I'm going to tell you a coming out story. I want to tell you about my mother, coming out to my mother. My mom was an amazing woman. She was bipolar. She was hard to live with, and I loved her to death because she was my mom, but also because she had a wonderful heart. And over time, I left home when I was 16 to strike out on my own. And so I separated from my family for a long time, and I was coming out in Halifax. And the thought I had was I don't want to tell Mom about this because that would put a burden on her that I'm not sure how to add any more burden to her already burdened life. I wasn't going to do that. So one day I was actually living in Halifax, and I was living in a co-op with 7 other women. And my mom loved to come visit me when I was living with other women. She would come and hang out, and she got to playing with my housemates who got busy kind of making fun of me because my mom instigated it. And it was fun for her, and it was not done in a shaming way or a painful way, but I had to get her out of there because I didn't want to have a bad influence of anybody in the house believing that they could pick on me like my mother did. No way, babe. So we took off for the day, and we were walking up, and my mom comes from a town that has a one stop sign. That's, the size of the town. And a 2-story building was like, a skyscraper. And so we were walking up towards the main street of Halifax. It was very busy. It was a very busy street, and I noticed that she was getting nervous. And so I said, Mom, what's going on? She said, oh, I get a little nervous. And so I grabbed her by the arm, and we got going, and all of a sudden she yanked away from me. I said, Mom, what's happening? She said, well, somebody's going to think we're lesbians. I said, well, Mom, one of us here is. She stood back and she looked at me. You could see the penny needed to drop, right? She's just looking at me, and the next thing you know, she had this weird look on her face. And the next thing you know, she grabs me by the arm, and off we go. You see, I knew my mother loved me, but I wasn't prepared to give her any more of a burden than she already had in her life. So we don't know. At the time that I came out to her, women were, basically, lesbians weren't even recognized as a situation in the world because if one good fuck could fix that. So we were one good fuck away from being not lesbian. That is not the case, by the way, just so you need to know that. But my family embraced me, but many women did not get embraced. Men did not get embraced. People of trans did not get embraced. We are at a time in society where we can embrace each other with a truth of heart that will not be broken by any system that tells us we can't do it. Our job now is to be truthful to ourselves and to really create a safe and sacred space for everybody to live their dream to their fullest potential and hold on to the thing that they love the most. So my request for you today is 3 things. Be true to yourself. Get really curious about what it is you want to wrap up and hand back over to a system that does not deserve your patronage. And to find somebody in this room today where you will be building your community. Make the network happen. Make the connection happen. Make the heartfelt stuff happen. So that is my thing. Now, I've got a book out, wink, wink, as Charlie would say. Carly, thank you for that little line, but I wanted to read this poem out of this book, which because of something Stacy said. And I've always wondered about this design, this human design. I always wanted a third hand, and this would be where I want it right now. So here's the poem. It says, a seed believes. Can you smell the richness of the soil? The aliveness of spring. Buds pushing against the moisture of possibility. New beginnings held up by ritual. Seeds planted long before the breaking of the ground or the vision of what is to come. Can you smell the clarity of purpose? The expression of destiny that a seed believes? Not from a conscious intention, but with an instinct so richly embedded, it has no choice. That seed is planted in you. You can feel its cravings, the need for fulfillment. Can you smell its destiny in you? You are the richness, the soil that births the seed. A seed believes. Thank you very much. My name is Brenda Bryan, and I am the diviner of human potential. Talk to you soon. Bye.